During my research, I stumbled across an island that might be one of the strangest places in the world. There is an entire village living inside a double volcanic crater in the middle of the Pacific Ocean. From satellite imagery, it almost doesn't look real. And that made me wonder what other bizarre and mysterious islands are out there. So I started going down a Google rabbit hole of strange islands and bizarre stories. And eventually, I came up with a list of what might be the most mysterious islands in the world. Island number 3 became infamous after over 7,000 king penguins suddenly died in a bizarre event that helped fuel rumors the island was cursed. Number 4 is an island that appeared on maps for more than a century, despite never actually existing. Another island on this list, surrounded by stories of ancient giants, is home to some of the biggest cacti on Earth and a species of rattlesnake that somehow lost its rattle. And if that's not enough, the final island on this list hides a secret Soviet submarine base built inside a flooded volcanic crater. So, get ready to have your mind blown, and let's start with number 1. While searching for the perfect examples, I quickly realized that the strangest islands were usually the ones that felt the most isolated. Places cut off from the rest of the world long enough for strange stories, unusual history, and bizarre events to build up around them. And few islands fit that better than this one. Trindade Island is a small volcanic island located more than 600 miles off the coast of Brazil, deep in the South Atlantic Ocean. There are no cities, almost no permanent residents, and even today the island is mostly restricted to Brazilian Navy personnel and scientific teams. And for such a tiny, isolated island, Trindade has an absurd amount of strange stories connected to it. One of the strangest discoveries made there in recent years were something called plastiglomerates. Scientists found rocks on the island partially made from melted plastic debris fused directly into natural stone and sand. Fishing nets and ocean waste carried across the Atlantic had literally become part of the island's geology, creating a material that should not naturally exist. But long before that discovery, Trindade had already become famous for something far stranger. In 1958, one of the most famous UFO incidents in South American history supposedly took place near the island. Multiple people on board a Brazilian Navy ship reported seeing a strange flying object moving above the ocean near Trindade's volcanic mountains. And unlike most UFO stories, this one allegedly produced photographs. A photographer named Almiro Baraúna managed to capture several images before the object disappeared behind the island. The photographs spread internationally, the Brazilian Navy acknowledged the incident, and people still debate whether the images showed a genuine unidentified object, a hoax, or some kind of military aircraft. The island also became connected to pirate legends. Stories spread that a pirate named Zulmiro buried a massive stolen treasure somewhere on Trindade, leading to treasure hunts that continued for decades without success. And then, in 1893, the island somehow got even stranger. An American newspaper editor named James Hardin Hickey decided to claim the island for himself, declaring himself James I, Prince of Trindade. He designed a national flag, created stamps, planned government positions, and tried to establish his own kingdom in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean before Brazil eventually reclaimed control of the island a few years later. And somehow, this is still only the first island on this list, because the next one became isolated for so long that even its animals started evolving in bizarre ways. From a remote volcanic island in the South Atlantic, we now move to another island, surrounded by stories of ancient giants. And while those legends may sound ridiculous at first, the deeper you look into this place, the stranger the island actually becomes. This is island number 2. Isla Santa Catalina is located just off the coast of California, near Los Angeles. Today, most people know it as a tourist destination filled with beaches, small towns, and luxury boats. But the island has a much stranger reputation beneath the surface. In the 1920s, an amateur archaeologist named Ralph Glidden claimed he had discovered the remains of a lost race of giants buried across Catalina Island. According to him, some of the skeletons were unusually tall, with strange features including light-colored hair. Newspapers helped spread the story, and for years Catalina became connected to theories about ancient giant civilizations. Most archaeologists today heavily question the claims, and much of the evidence later disappeared, but the legend of the Catalina giants never fully went away. And strangely enough, the island itself is genuinely unusual even without the stories. Because of the island's long isolation, some of Catalina's cactus species grew significantly larger than their mainland relatives through a phenomenon known as island gigantism, creating landscapes that almost don't feel like coastal California anymore. And even stranger, the island is home to a species of rattlesnake that gradually lost its rattle entirely. Scientists believe the snake stopped needing the warning sound because there were very few large predators or animals on the island. But because of that, the snakes also gained a reputation for being far more unpredictable than normal rattlesnakes. The island also developed a reputation for paranormal activity. In the town of Avalon, ghost tours investigate supposedly haunted locations across Catalina, especially the old casino ballroom, where visitors and employees have reported strange sounds, shadowy figures, and unexplained activity for decades. And somehow, this still isn't the strangest island on the list. From an island near the coast of California, we now move about 1,000 miles south of New Zealand, into one of the most isolated regions on Earth, because this next island is so strange that geologists consider it one of the only places on the planet where part of Earth's mantle is rising directly above the ocean surface. And that still isn't the weirdest thing that happened there. This is island number 3. Macquarie Island is a small, windswept island located in the Southern Ocean, roughly halfway between New Zealand and Antarctica. There are no cities, no tourism industry, and almost nobody lives there permanently except a small rotating group of scientists. And considering how remote the island is, its landscape already feels unsettling enough on its own. The island is constantly covered in fog, violent winds, freezing rain, and enormous colonies of penguins and seals. Early sealers who reached Macquarie during the 1800s often described it as miserable, dangerous, and cursed because of how many ships were wrecked in the surrounding waters. But what truly makes Macquarie unique is what the island is actually made of. Geologists consider it one of the rarest islands on Earth because it is formed almost entirely from oceanic crust and rocks from Earth's mantle that were pushed above sea level. In other words, part of the ocean floor itself is sticking out of the water here. And nowhere else on Earth does this happen on such a visible scale. But somehow, even that is not the strangest story connected to the island. In 1990, thousands of king penguins suddenly rushed across part of the island in what became known as the Penguin Stampede. According to reports from researchers, around 7,000 penguins moved together in a chaotic mass movement that resulted in many of them falling to their deaths from cliffs and rocky slopes. To this day, nobody fully agrees on what triggered the event. Some researchers blame panic spreading through the colony, while others connected it to predators or environmental stress. But because of Macquarie's already eerie reputation, stories quickly spread that the island itself was somehow cursed. And honestly, looking at the place, it is not hard to understand why. From one of the strangest real islands on Earth, we now move to an island that may have never existed at all, because until 2012, this next island still appeared on maps, globes, and even modern digital navigation systems, despite the fact that nobody had ever properly confirmed it was actually there. This is island number 4. Sandy Island was supposedly located in the Coral Sea between Australia and New Caledonia, right in the middle of the Pacific Ocean, and for more than 100 years, people believed it was real. The island first appeared on nautical charts in the late 1800s after a whaling ship reportedly spotted a large landmass in the area. Over time, Sandy Island started appearing on maps around the world, including atlases, scientific databases, and eventually even Google Earth. There was just one problem. Nobody could actually confirm the island existed. Some ships passed through the area without seeing anything, but because the island had already existed on maps for generations, most people simply assumed the earlier crews had been more accurate, and somehow, the mystery survived all the way into the modern satellite era. In 2012, a group of Australian scientists on board the research vessel called Southern Surveyor decided to finally investigate the island directly. According to every map they had, they were supposed to arrive at a large island roughly 15 miles long. Instead, when they reached the exact coordinates, they found absolutely nothing. No land, no rocks, just open ocean almost a mile deep. The discovery immediately became international news because one of the world's most famous phantom islands had just been officially disproven in real life. To this day, Researchers still debate how the island survived on maps for so long. But whatever the explanation is, until 2012, people genuinely believed there was a missing island somewhere in the Pacific Ocean that never actually existed at all. From an island that never truly existed, we now move to one that contains something very real, because hidden beneath a giant concrete dome in the middle of the Pacific Ocean is thousands of tons of radioactive waste left behind by nuclear weapons testing. And today, people are starting to worry that the structure may not hold forever. This is island number 5. Runit Island is a small tropical island located in the Marshall Islands, deep in the Pacific Ocean. At first glance, it looks almost identical to dozens of other tiny islands scattered across the region. But hidden near the center of the island is one of the strangest structures anywhere in the Pacific. A massive concrete dome filled with radioactive waste from American nuclear testing. Between 1946 and 1958, the United States conducted dozens of nuclear tests across the Marshall Islands, including some of the most powerful nuclear explosions ever detonated. Entire islands were vaporized, lagoons were contaminated with radiation, and large areas became dangerous for human habitation. Years later, American authorities attempted to contain part of the radioactive material by dumping more than 70,000 cubic meters of contaminated soil, debris, and nuclear waste into a giant crater on Runit Island created by an earlier nuclear blast. The crater was then sealed with a huge concrete dome nearly 400 feet wide. Today, the structure is often called the tomb. And what makes the island especially unsettling is that the dome was never built from the bottom. The radioactive material sits directly on porous ground only meters away from the Pacific Ocean itself. Over the years, cracks have appeared in parts of the concrete, and rising sea levels have increased fears that radioactive material could eventually leak into surrounding waters. Meanwhile, despite the contamination, people still live on nearby islands. And because of its remote location, giant concrete structure, and Cold War history, Runit Island has become one of the strangest and most unsettling places visible on satellite imagery anywhere in the Pacific Ocean. From a tropical island hiding radioactive waste beneath concrete, we now move to one of the coldest and most isolated places on Earth. Because this next island allows ships to sail directly into the flooded center of an active volcano in Antarctica. And somehow, people still tried building settlements there. This is island number 6. Deception Island sits in the South Shetland Islands, just off the Antarctic Peninsula. From the air, it looks like a broken ring, a horseshoe-shaped piece of land surrounding a flooded crater. What makes it unusual is that the crater is the volcano, and the volcano is still active. The island is shaped like a horseshoe because one side of the volcanic caldera collapsed thousands of years ago, creating a narrow channel called Neptune's Bellows. Ships can sail through this gap and enter directly into the flooded crater, a bay called Port Foster. Once inside, you're floating on top of a volcano. Deception Island is one of the most active volcanic sites in Antarctica. It's erupted multiple times in recorded history. The most recent major eruptions happened in 1967, 1969, and 1970, destroying scientific research stations and forcing evacuations. Despite the danger, people kept coming back. In the early 1900s, Deception Island was used as a whaling station. Whale oil was processed here in massive boilers, and thousands of whales were killed and rendered down into their component parts. Rusting tanks, decaying wooden structures, and whale bones still litter the beaches today. After whaling collapsed, scientists built research stations on the island. Then, the volcano erupted and buried them in ash. Some of the abandoned stations are still there, half collapsed and coated in black volcanic rock. But here's the strangest part. Because Deception Island is volcanically active, there are geothermal hot springs along the shoreline. In certain spots, you can dig a shallow hole in the black sand, and warm water bubbles up from below. This has led to one of the most surreal experiences in Antarctica. People swimming in naturally heated water on a frozen continent, surrounded by glaciers and penguins, while floating inside an active volcano. The island is also home to one of the largest chinstrap penguin colonies in Antarctica. Over 140,000 breeding pairs. They nest on the slopes of the caldera, seemingly unbothered by the fact that the ground beneath them could erupt at any moment. Today, Deception Island is a popular stop for Antarctic cruise ships. tourists come to see the abandoned whaling station, the collapsed research bases, and the volcanic beaches. But everyone who visits is reminded that they're standing on an active volcano that has destroyed everything humans ever built here, and could do it again without warning. From a volcanic island hidden in Antarctica, we now move back into the Pacific Ocean to one of the strangest inhabited islands anywhere on Earth. Because this next island is so isolated that an entire community ended up living inside the crater of an active volcano. And somehow, even after a deadly eruption wiped out much of the population, people still came back. This is island number 7. Aogashima is a tiny Japanese island located around 220 miles south of Tokyo, in the middle of the Philippine Sea. And from satellite imagery, the island almost doesn't look real. The entire island is actually the outer rim of a massive volcanic crater, but inside that crater sits another smaller volcano, creating a rare double caldera formation that looks more like something from a fantasy movie than a real inhabited place. And somehow, around 200 people still live there. What makes that even more surprising is the island's history. In the late 1700s, Aogashima experienced a series of major volcanic eruptions that completely devastated the settlement. The eruptions lasted for years, triggering landslides, destroying homes, and killing a large part of the island's population. Eventually, the surviving residents abandoned the island entirely, but years later, many of them voluntarily returned. Despite knowing the volcano was still active, the former residents rebuilt the settlement directly inside the same giant crater where the disaster had happened. And even today, living there is not easy. The island has no airport, weather conditions regularly cut it off from the outside world, and access is limited to a small helicopter service or boats that often cannot dock because of rough seas and steep volcanic cliffs. But isolation also helped create one of the strangest communities in Japan. Most of the island's population knows each other personally. Geothermal steam from the volcano is still used for heating and cooking, and daily life continues inside one of the most bizarre island landscapes anywhere on Earth. And honestly, the deeper this video goes, the more it starts feeling like the most mysterious islands are usually the ones that seem least connected to the rest of the world. From an island where people chose to live inside an active volcanic crater, we now move to a tiny island in the Indian Ocean where people had no choice at all. Because after a shipwreck stranded dozens of people there, they were completely abandoned and forgotten for years. This is island number 8. Tromelin Island is a tiny, flat island located in the Indian Ocean, east of Madagascar. The island is so small and isolated that from satellite imagery, it barely even looks capable of supporting human life. There are no rivers, almost no natural shelter, and the entire island is constantly exposed to powerful tropical storms and heat. And yet, people somehow survived there for more than 15 years. In 1761, a French ship carrying enslaved people from Madagascar crashed into the reef surrounding Tromelin Island. The crew managed to reach land, but the ship was destroyed, leaving everybody stranded in the middle of the ocean. Over the following weeks, the French sailors used parts of the wreck to build a small escape boat. But when the boat was finally completed, the crew abandoned the island, leaving around 60 Malagasy slaves behind with very little food, water, or resources. And then they disappeared. Years passed. Cyclones repeatedly hit the island. Supplies ran out, and the isolated survivors were forced to somehow continue living on one of the harshest islands imaginable. They built crude shelters from coral blocks and wreckage, caught birds and turtles for food, and survived in conditions that honestly seem almost impossible. 15 years later, in 1776, a rescue ship finally returned. Only 7 women and 1 infant were still alive. Today, Tromelin remains almost completely uninhabited, visited mainly by occasional scientific or weather missions. From a tiny island where abandoned survivors somehow stayed alive for 15 years, we now move to one of the strangest places left behind by the Soviet Union. Because hidden inside a flooded volcanic crater on this next island is an abandoned submarine base that still looks almost unreal from satellite imagery. This is island number 9. Simushir Island is part of the Kuril Islands, a remote volcanic chain stretching between Japan and Russia in the northern Pacific Ocean. Today, the island is completely abandoned. There are no permanent residents, no tourism industry, and almost no regular human activity anywhere on the island. Massive volcanic mountains rise directly out of the ocean. The weather is brutal for most of the year, and thick fog regularly covers the coastline. But hidden inside one of the island's volcanic formations is what might be the strangest abandoned military location anywhere in the Pacific. A secret Soviet submarine base, built inside a flooded volcanic crater. The base was constructed during the Cold War inside Bruton Bay, a massive natural harbor formed by volcanic activity. Because the bay is almost completely enclosed by steep crater walls, Soviet submarines could hide there naturally protected from storms, reconnaissance, and open ocean conditions. At its peak, the base included docks, fuel storage, military housing, communication systems, and infrastructure designed to support submarines operating across the Pacific. And considering how isolated the island already was, it became one of the most secretive military locations in the Soviet Far East. But after the collapse of the Soviet Union, the base was abandoned. Today, the remaining structures are slowly decaying beside empty docks and volcanic cliffs, while rusting buildings sit surrounded by fog, black volcanic terrain, and almost complete silence. And honestly, the island already feels mysterious enough without the military history. So after all of that, one question remains. Which island story was the most unusual or mysterious? Let me know in the comments. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe. It really helps me grow. And if you feel like I didn't include some of the more obvious examples, check out these videos next, where I explore even more strange and forbidden islands around the world. Thanks for watching.